All right. Well, I'm getting ready to go into town into Perth. Uh, Got some rice pudding there on my lip. I was eating rice pudding earlier. Anyway, I'm getting ready to go into Perth, and I have to go out to my storage unit and put that office chair in there now that I've taken it apart so it'll fit in the unit easily, or more easily. I have to also get some of my stuff off the lot where I was going to camp, where the neighbors raised hell, so I can't do that anymore. I have to go and do that. And I'm probably going to be working tomorrow, so this will be my day to do it. But I want to talk about something that bugs me, and it may raise the ire of some people, especially some women who are watching this, because I'm going to talk in a way that might be upsetting to some people, but it's the truth. And what I'm going to say isn't meant as a dig at women in general, but it is a message to those women who behave reprehensibly and then hide behind the fact that they're a woman to avoid consequences. And this, like I say, I had this situation a couple of years ago with a woman, and she caused me some trouble, and she ended up getting some money off me. Now, she did message me in the springtime there wanting to come and pay the money back, but the problem is I don't trust her. So I don't know what, I just don't want to go down that road again. I don't want to deal with her anymore. But even to get the money back, because I have a feeling she'll be working some sort of an angle, and I just don't trust her. I might get a portion of the money back, but it might cost me dearly. And she is one of those women who hides behind her vagina, who hides behind being a woman. And here's the thing. Women who do that, it's a disgusting thing to do. And a lot of these women who do that, they also claim to be feminist. But let me tell you something. If you're a woman who does that, and it isn't just this one woman that I had the experience with a couple of years ago, I see this a lot, where they throw up the fact that they're a woman in order to avoid consequences when they do wrong. And I'll tell you something, though. If you do that, if you're a woman and you do that, you should not call yourself a feminist. And I'm going to tell you why. If you're a woman and you do that, you actually set your own cause back about 40 years. Now, I'm just old enough that I remember a time when a woman couldn't get credit without a man co-signing for her. She had to have a, quote, responsible male co-sign for her to get credit. If a woman went into a store in a little town where everybody knew each other and she wanted to buy an expensive item, oftentimes the store clerk would call that woman's husband because he'd know who he was. He'd call him up at work and say, hey, I've got your wife here. She's looking to buy such and such. It's X number of dollars. Would it be okay if I sell to her? He'd get the husband's permission before he'd deal with her. A woman couldn't rent an apartment on her own. Many landlords insisted on a male cosigner. Oftentimes it'd have to be her dad or her uncle or her brother. And that's how it was. And that way, if she screwed up and did damage in the place or didn't pay her rent, they'd go after the cosigner. They'd go after the one who backed her to get the place, the man. And you had to be what they called a responsible male. In other words, a full-time employed male with a good credit score, who they knew was good for the money and who had a good reputation and a good reputation for paying his debts. that you'd need somebody like that if you were a woman. And dealing with most landlords, even 40 years ago, it was like that. Like I say, 40 years ago, I was a young man. I'm 56 now. I was 16 40 years ago. I remember those days. I had a female friend who, even in the early 1990s, she rented a commercial space because she was running a business, and the landlord wouldn't talk to her unless also her father was there, and her father had to sign for her. The landlord told her flat out he did not deal with women directly, and that she would need a male as a go-between, and she would need a male to sign, a responsible man to sign on her behalf. That she couldn't just sign the lease on, as a woman, she couldn't just sign the lease on her own. That was in the early 1990s. So as recently as then, even, that was the case. Back in 1980, when my parents split up, I went around with my mother looking at apartments for rent. And without fail, the landlord would ask, "Where's your husband? Is he working or what? Where is he?" And when she said, "I've left my husband," a landlord would say, "Oh, well, the place isn't available. Sorry you had to come out, but the place isn't available," and walk away. That happened over and over again because that was a woman who had left her husband, and so automatically was not to be trusted. That was the attitude, and that's in my lifetime. This is all stuff I remember. And so when a woman doesn't pay her debts, behaves like a con artist, is deceptive, irresponsible, or whatever, and then hides the two things together on their own, doesn't really matter. But when you put the two together, here's where you have a problem. When a woman does that, she sets all women back. Even a woman who is responsible, even a woman who pays her bills, even a woman who works hard, even a woman whose word is good. She sets all women back when she does this. So if you're a woman who does this, like the woman that I had my experience with, you are not a feminist. Don't claim to be, for the cause or whatever, for women's rights, while at the same time doing things to undermine the cause you claim to be for. And like I say, I'm an old guy now. I'm not old like some people. I'm not, 89 years old or whatever, or 100 or something. But I'm old enough that I remember how it used to be. And that is how it was. And women had to work very hard to overcome that. That wasn't just an overnight thing where business people and landlords and other people like that said, "You know what, maybe we've been unfair." No, they had to fight for that. They had to fight for that equality. So if you're a woman who's abusing it, if you're a woman who's saying, "Well, I'm a woman, therefore I shouldn't be held accountable when I lie and cheat and steal and be deceptive," well, a man should be held accountable. Oh, yeah, if you're a man and you do that, but I'm a woman, so I'm special and I shouldn't be held accountable. I'm going to hide now behind my vagina, so that you can't hold me to account. And if you do, well, then you're an abuser. You're abusing a woman. Shame on you for abusing a woman. When they come at you like that, and that's what I had happen to me with this particular woman I was dealing with. And I've had it happen before too, where women have played nasty, dirty tricks on me and then hidden behind the fact that they're a woman. And I know of other situations that I wasn't directly involved with where the same thing happened. When that happens, that woman, if you are a responsible woman, you shouldn't be mad at a man for trying to hold that other one accountable. You should be mad at the woman who's now setting you back because she's proving those men from 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, she's proven that they were right not to trust a woman. You know, she's actually reinforcing the stereotype that governed business in those days, and that oftentimes made it very difficult for a woman to get ahead or to succeed or to even survive. I mean, imagine you need a place to live. Nobody will rent to you because you're a woman and because you don't have a man to sign for you. You're on the street unless you can find a responsible man who's willing to take a chance on you and sign for you. Unless your dad can do it, or your brother can do it, or your uncle can do it. You're shit out of luck. You got no place to go. And that's because of a stereotype. You know, that's because of a preconceived notion. So like I said, when you do that, now this particular woman I had to run in with, she's borrowed money from a lot of guys. And she don't generally pay it back. And she has been threatened. She's had guys threaten to go to her house and beat her up and everything. And she will say, you know, imagine though a man threatening me, a woman. Well, I mean, it's not as if it's an unprovoked threat. And it's not as if he's threatening her because she wouldn't date him, or because he just thinks he's going to pick on a woman because, you know, he's Mr. Tough Guy or whatever, and he's going to prove his toughness by beating the hell out of a woman. I mean, that's not what this is. That's not what it is. It's actually because she has ran a con on that guy. And he's treating her the same way he'd treat a man who ran a con on him. Which actually is equality. You know, if you're a woman running a con on somebody, and that person treats you the way they would treat a man who ran a con on them, then what you're getting there is actually equality. Whether you like it or not, doesn't matter. It is equality. But if you hide behind being a woman, then you're actually pushing for inequality. Because you're basically saying, oh no, we're not equal. You know, we shouldn't be expected to keep our word because we're inferior. A man should be expected to keep his word, but a woman shouldn't because a woman is inferior to a man. That's what women who do that, that's the message they're sending. And that was the norm. If you go back, even, like I say, even into the 1980s, that was the norm. Now, by the early 90s, it really wasn't so much. When my friend who had a business tried renting a commercial space, but she was dealing with an old school landlord. She's dealing with a landlord who had been a landlord since the 1950s. And so he still did things the old way. And there were quite a few of those around, even in the 90s, but it wasn't no longer standard practice to be that way by then, but it still did happen on occasion. Anyway, she had to have her dad present for all negotiations, and she had to have her dad sign so that if she became delinquent in the rent payments or whatever, the landlord could go after him. And of course, her dad was an older man who was well established. His credit was good. He was a homeowner, and he'd worked all his life, and he could in fact sign for her. He was considered a good risk, so he could sign for her. Automatically, he was considered a good risk by this landlord because he was a man. He automatically had an advantage over a woman who the landlord wouldn't deal with directly. And he also because he was a man who had established himself in a positive way. He was a man, that could walk into a car dealership and drive out with a new car on credit. No problem. He was a man that could go to a bank and get a line of credit. Say, I need a $10,000 line of credit. They'd say, yes, sir. Here you go. You got it. And that's what you needed as a woman in order to be able to deal with a landlord. Like I say, by the early 90s, when that happened to her, it wasn't really the norm anymore. In the early 80s, it still was, though. 10 years earlier, it still was. But anyway, that's the bottom line. If you're a woman and you behave reprehensibly, then you need to own that shit. That's based just like a man does. A man needs to own his shit too. I'm not trying to let men off the hook here. But a man can't hide behind his penis. As a man, I can't say, well, I'm a man, and sure, I behave reprehensibly, but anybody who tries to hold me to account for that is abusing me. I can't say that as a man. I've just got to take my lumps. If I deserve my lumps, I'm going to get them. I got to take them. I don't have a choice. I can't hide behind being a man. And the thing is, if you're a woman who does that, and I'm not saying all women do that, I don't think it would be fair to say that. I'm speaking to a specific demographic, to a specific group of women who I know who do this. Don't hide behind the fact that you're a woman. It's unbecoming, it's unfair, and you're actually going to undo many years of progress that was made by women. Women had to prove themselves, and that wasn't easy for them, but they had to do it. And women who now hide behind being a woman while they do reprehensible things, they're effectively undoing all of that. So, unless you want to go back to the days where your dad had to sign so you could rent an apartment, or your husband had to give a merchant permission to sell to you, you better just cool it. Stop hiding behind being a woman. It's not good. Anyway, having said all that, I'll leave on a positive note. It's a beautiful day. I've got things to do. It's a nice day for a drive. I'm looking forward to getting out on the road and getting into Perth and doing what I need to do. I think I'll stop at the grocery store and get myself another one of those nice sandwiches and some of those little melon thing there. I like that. That melon mania thing there, little plastic container full of assorted melon pieces. Oh yeah. Hopefully they'll have my ham and Havarti with the pickle that I like for a sandwich. I didn't really care for the roast beef sandwich from yesterday, so I'm hoping they'll have what I want today. Or not from yesterday, but from earlier in the week when I was there. I'm hoping that they won't all be picked over today and I'll actually be able to get what I want. Fingers crossed. I can't really cross my fingers very well. This is me with my fingers crossed. This is as far as they'll go. All right. We'll talk to you later.